Welcome to the Doors Secret Sauce Podcast, the podcast where we get to pull back the curtain and step into the mess.
Show up
For the loneliest generation with a new set design every week. But no, we're gonna see if this works. We'll see how the viewers like it. If you hate it, let us know in the comments below. We have a special guest today. He's new to you, but he's not new to us. Alex, or it might be Andrew.
Not Andrew.
I don't know.
That's okay.
All right, no, go ahead, Alex. Tell the people a little bit about who you are and why you're here.
Yeah, so, hi. Do I look at the camera?
You can definitely look at that camera.
Okay, cool.
That camera there. Definitely.
I'm Alex. I'm an Adore missionary at Shrine of the True Cross. I'm married and have 2 kids with my wonderful wife, Kate, who used to be an Adore missionary, but now staying at home with the kids. Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to chat with you guys.
Yes, and we are happy to have you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank you.
Folks, last week, every week we check in on each other and kind of share a little bit more about what folks might not know about the ministry life as a missionary, as an Adore missionary, but also you might find things, whether you're a DRE, a youth minister volunteer, right? Or even a young adult who might be discerning whether or not you want to step into that mess and meet the loneliest generation, these teens that need to hear the word, that need to meet the person of Jesus Christ. Adore serves to do that. So real quick, a little public service announcement. If you are that person that wants to find out more about Adore and what they do, maybe you feel called to go on mission for a summer or for the better part of a year, whatever it is, check us out with Adore Ministries, and we're going to put the link there for you. But otherwise, let's introduce today's topic. But first, let's say hello.
We have a table now.
We have a table now. We've said that. We've already.
We said that?
We've done the table thing.
I don't remember saying that.
No. Yeah, now we're going to figure out whether or not we like the semicircle, or we like just the circle, or we like this rectangle.
This rectangle.
I like the table.
We could introduce a rhombus. You never know.
There you go, yes.
They do make rhombus tables. I don't know why.
Guys, and if nothing else, the table allows us to have these real, these mugs that don't have anything in them.
Mine does.
These guys do, but not I.
They.
Anyway, let's talk about today's topic. Today's topic is called Holy Disruption, or another word for that, I would call it, is the pivot in the Holy Disruption. How many times in our own ministry life experiences do we kind of set everything up? We set up the stage, we set up the environment that we believe that this is the space, this is the place that our teens are going to come into weekly, and this is how they're going to receive said word, right? You have your lesson plan, you have all this, your goals, you're going to have to do small group time here, you're going to have an icebreaker over here, all these things. But sometimes our ministry extends beyond that, obviously, right? It's not something that is planned or scripted as much as we want it to be, as much as we want to be so careful with every minute accounted for. Sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes we get a holy disruption, which is something we welcome. Sure, we say that by word, like, yeah, we welcome the Spirit to move. But really, are we ready to receive an interruption? And how do we pivot? How do we serve the loneliest generation when things don't always go according to plan, or might have us extend beyond our space, our parish, right? So.
Yeah, this is a theme that we broke open as a mission group, last semester or 2 semesters ago, sometime last year, as we were breaking open during our formations, our core values, which we've touched on in this podcast. But the idea of being spirit driven, and so one of our 2 of our first core values is being anchored Catholics, so kind of being anchored in the faith and the sacraments, and then being led by the Spirit, which would mean when we plan something, making sure that is not just something that comes out of routine and habit, but a place of prayer. Let's pray, is this what the Lord wants? Especially once we get into, we've become, for Alex, I feel he's now entering into a space of seasoned mission where he's done this for 2 years, versus when he first joined, a lot of this was like, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so once you get into the season aspect, it's easy to recycle stuff. It's easy to say like, this is the retreat I've run, this is how I run that retreat, rather than like every year being like, this is what we've always done, but let's still take it to prayer and see like, is this what we should be doing? And then on the flip side of that, something you and I talked about kind of before this too, but the idea of like in the midst of ministry, listening to the Spirit of like, as we're moving, is the next thing that's supposed to happen the best next thing that should be happening, or do we need to pivot, like you were saying, to something different? So just that mindset of just being interruptible, which is why I think it says like disruption. So allowing the Holy Spirit to disrupt your own plans and disrupt the expectations the teens might have, especially on the weekly ministry nights where, like, you know, if you use the Life Teen model or other models, there is a purpose to the format because the teens can like grow in the structure, but also disrupting it in the same way. Like when we go on retreat, you're disrupting the normal flow of what kids are used to doing on a Saturday or a weekend, so that the Holy Spirit and the Lord can show up.
Gotcha. So with that, many things, but let's stay with that holy disruption outside of the regular youth night, right? When we're out in the wild, right? Or a teen. Wait, real quick, raise your hand if you've ever seen your teen out in the wild, like not in your
In the
youth group
wild,
space. Hands?
like camping.
How is that for you guys? My inclination is to hide. Like I'm just like, oh no, I don't want to see them right now.
As the instructor.
Like you're in Costco and you're in line, and here comes, you know, Jimmy Bob, and you're like,
Jimmy Bob.
you know, and you're just
My
like,
best friend.
dude, get out of here.
I remember when I was.
I spend time with you.
I remember when I was a kid, and I would see like a teacher at the grocery store. I thought that was the weirdest thing. I was like, and as a kid, I wanted to hide. Like I was like, I don't want to see my teacher. Ugh.
You eat?
As an adult.
No way.
As an adult.
I can see this.
No, I didn't think about that as a child. It was just more so like, I only saw them at school, and I was like, when I leave this building, these people don't exist.
They don't exist.
They don't exist.
They exist in a void.
They just shut off like,
That's exactly.
till the next day.
Yeah, these people don't exist outside of this building for me. But it's like I'm the center of my own story.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
As an adult or a youth minister or a missionary, seeing the teens outside, that always excites me because I don't know. I feel like in ministry and at the church where I'm supposed to be doing my job, doing my work, sometimes I can have more walls built up because I'm also the one in charge of running the night. So when I'm out in the wild, I don't have those things, and I can almost like more authentically into like a conversation with a teen. It's just more easier. More easier.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna let you have that one. I was like, more easier. I'll allow it.
Most easiest.
Yes. Cool,
Mucho
cool.
easier.
How about you? Any funny stories of seeing teens in the wild there?
Not too many. I mean, I did see a teen at a wedding yesterday, but that was weird. But outside of that, I mean, I think the couple times that's happened, it depends on how much I know the teen. I know I've gone on retreats where I like never connected with a specific teen, but then I see them at HEB and I'm just like, I don't know your name and I don't know who you are, but you know who I am, and this is a little weird. But it's not like weird in the sense of like I want to run away from this person. It's just like, let's sit in that discomfort. I'm going to go to his line so that he sees that I'm a normal person and that I don't exist in the void. But yeah, it's not. I don't think. I'm like of the practice of leaning into the uncomfortable. So when I see a teen in the wild, it's just like acknowledge them for sure.
Gotcha.
But
No, sure. And while I joke, which I do a lot, and I say like, oh, I hide, you know, like they know I'm hiding, like, and they'll find me, whatever. So just the other day, like at the QT, like, you know, at the Quick Trip, this gas station, you know, and they want to know like, oh, what does he order? Like, what's his order? Like, what's your order? And like they're like behind me, breathing on my neck, like just like right there, right? And so things like that where. But I welcome. I think it's cool. Let them know that you're you're a real person, you know, that you do in fact eat, and they want to know your order like you're some kind of celebrity. I think it's kind of funny. But with the kids though, I always like to see where they're coming from, and so you're in fact right. You're actually sometimes most times because you're leading the night. At least this is how I take what you're saying. You're sometimes more inaccessible when you're on,
Right.
because you have a schedule to keep. You only have them for a fixed amount of time. Seeing them out in the wild, like a wild Pokemon. I keep thinking.
I
of
know you keep
National
saying
Geographic.
wild, and I'm like, I'm camping somewhere.
Yeah.
And a kid comes
When
up
you
and
see
pushes.
them out and about, you know, out on the town, or 4th of July is even crazier. Like when you see them like 4th of July or something, you're like, where are your parents? Like, you're just out here. It does lend itself to you guys chopping it up a little bit more and talking and see their family and say hello and stuff. But I've had moments where, like, going to what you were saying, where the team knows me, but I didn't know who that was, and so I had to play it off like, oh my god, like I don't know like who you are. Yeah, so just it is an awkward moment when you don't know the team, but I don't know. So now let's get into that part where have you had any moments where you've actually had to minister outside of the confines of your life night or your youth room outside of the parish, and how did the Lord kind of prepare you for that and to execute being present in that way? Because ultimately it comes down to being spirit driven. I think if you're resistant to that or you're ignorant to that, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, like I'll put myself out there. If I'm totally just steeped in the work and the pushing of the paper and doing the admin stuff, which is important, right? But the heart of that ministry is engaging with that teen and bringing them Christ. Like that has no limitations on okay, it's just fixed to 6 to 8. It's like well no, that's not how real life works, right? And so I'm curious to hear from you guys, what were those moments that you engaged with the team outside, not just a hello, but maybe where you actually have to do maybe some actual ministry work, some relational ministry work.
Yeah, it's been. I feel like I've encountered lots of mission families outside of the parish, but I haven't really had an unstructured or like unexpected situation where it's like a team in that conversation. I'm like, hey, this is super deep or this is super heavy. Let's like pray real quick. But I guess the two things that kind of come to mind, it still seems somewhat structured in some ways. Like a teen who couldn't come to our sacrament stuff or like the youth nights, and he was trying to get his sacrament prep for confirmation, and so we worked it out to where like I would just meet with him one-on-one, and we ended up meeting at Chewy's, wherever what's the one with free ice cream?
There's free ice cream
La Brisa.
given out.
Do what?
La Brisa.
No, the restaurant has like the free ice cream machines at the front.
Free ice cream out here.
In the
What's
waiting.
going on?
It's like a Mexican or Tex-Mex.
Chewy's probably has that.
Monkey?
Jimmy Chongas?
I think it's Jimmy Changas. Anyway.
Yeah, it's right down there. Road from Shrine. Yeah.
So I would meet with him and his mom at Jimmy Changa's and essentially be running sacrament catechesis. But because once again it wasn't in that structured setting of like here's the 50 kids that I'm meeting with, and so I'm trying to kind of disciple all of them, but also make sure that this lesson I had the freedom to like, yeah, this is what we need to cover, but also it's just you and me. So like it felt more like discipleship. It felt more like, look, you know this, so let's move on. You don't know this, like what's part of the like where do you have questions? Where do you have doubts? And it was like, man, I wish I could do this with all the teens, but there's like 30 to 50 kids getting confirmed, so that would be I guess 80-hour work week just to like walk with them one-on-one, each of them in that way. But that was one, and then another teen who I just discipled, we would meet up either to go, I think he liked playing Pokemon, the card game, I think you asked me about that the other day, and so we'd meet up to play that, and a youth group just because of the comfort of like the space that me and Chris provided. Eventually he kind of shared kind of like just came out to me and Chris, and this idea of like outside of the ministry nights where me and him would meet up to hang out or to disciple, kind of making sure like that didn't stop with this kind of information, like doesn't change the fact that like how I viewed him or how I saw him or the fact that he is still a child of God who is loved. And so like we would meet up for burgers or meet up to go walk and hang out to do just whatever, Pokemon or Pokemon Go, those kinds of things. And so it was like still a structured discipleship or a structured like class setting, I guess, in that way, because it was still had a purpose to its end, but it wasn't within the church, and so there was a freedom and less of those barriers because it wasn't like a structure, or it wasn't like a schedule for me to like uphold, if that made sense. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. No, it's your experience. I'm not gonna say that's not what I wanted, but
I know.
it is. It's good. Okay. Alex, how about you? Does this resonate at all? Does this tap into anything for you?
Ironically, not with teens, but I'll get into that. But like with my wife, for sure, when she was in ministry, you know, there were multiple times where, you know, she would just run into a teen at the parish or whatever. We didn't run into a ton of teens outside of the parish, but like she'd run into a teen, just start chatting, and then the next thing you know, the teen's crying and, you know, just pouring their heart out. But it's just that moment of just being available, seeing them, you know, the whole, but the experience that people had around JP2 and St. Teresa of Calcutta, where like it feels like you're the only person in the room. Like that's what these kids need. They need to be seen, known, and loved right where they're at in that moment. Because I know, you know, even, you know, and we'll get into it, but like in the youth night, when you're having an individual conversation, there can be like so many things going on around you, and you can get distracted and bogged you down and like not be paying full attention to this teen. But it's like, that's what they need. They need to be seen right where they're at. They need to be heard, even if you're just talking about football and, you know, like junior high football, and it's not this big discussion, but it's a big discussion for them. And it matters a lot to them. But for me, I've really used a lot of what I've learned within Adore, this notion of discipleship, and have applied that to a lot of just random young adults that I've met. Just like, how do you know this person? And then we're talking, and then we get into like the depths of their vocation and, you know, their struggles, and it's like, this is what the human person needs. This is what, and ultimately, like, yes, our calling within Adore is to do that with youth. And I love our structure of discipleship and how that allows a time and space for you to get into the nitty gritty of their spiritual life and their struggles. But yeah.
Gotcha. I know for me, when I think of like those holy interruptions or disruptions, oftentimes I kick myself because I remember moments where it happened and I wasn't ready or mature enough to answer. I was too focused on the clock's ticking, I have to get this ready, have to make sure the snacks or the meal's ready. I mean, our youth group was like, they weren't coming if I was throwing out cookies and chips. It had to be full-on blown meal, right? So I had to like always like be fundraising, always be calling parents, and that's how I kept them. That's how I kept a lot of these kids from coming at first, and then obviously the stake for the Jesus, yeah. But I really was like always logistically, because it was an area of weakness, so I felt like I always had to overcompensate. But what I really felt blessed by was my ability to have relational ministry opportunities and doing well in that. But I was so focused on the logistical side of things that I would be frustrated by, like, you know, internally. I'd be frustrated if a kid came by early to be with me. Like, I'm working, dude. Like, you know, like, and I'm not saying this.
I'm not ready.
Right. It's like, no, what time does it say? It says 6, like, I'm not saying this to them, but, I mean, sure, I mean, I'm very emotive. I'm sure there was some part of me that was projecting this kind of, like, I'm not ready for you, you know, kind of thing. And I get sad over it, thinking, like, cause like, man, but thanks be to God, like, they'll keep coming. And eventually, like, it turned on, like, okay, this is what's needed right now. They need to be heard. They need to be listened to. They need a moment with me that they don't get anywhere else. And so I just remember that. And it was a kid that was with me all 4 years, and then had a hard time transitioning out to young adult life. But he would still come by, and he needed to be heard and listened to, and I just, yeah, I think early on, I think the temptation was for me, as it might be for some of the people listening, or for you guys, yeah, that was difficult. Being able to be like, yes, certain things need to get done, but that's not his problem. You know, my lack of planning and my procrastination is not his problem.
Yeah.
I need to be ready. I need to put in the time to make sure that all my ducks are in a row, to just make room for that disruption and to welcome it. And to welcome him, like the Lord, like through that, the Holy Spirit. Like, don't be so caught up to the point where you're not emotionally available. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing that I think that I'm like, man, like how many, like that was good for that one kid, but I'm sure I missed the boat on a few.
Yeah, I remember when I first started with Adora during the internship, and I was at one of our older parishes. There was this kid named Johnny who lived, like, literally, like, if you're at the church, you could see his house. It's, like, right there. But he would never come to anything. He would, but he would, like, we would have, like, our soccer night or have our youth night, and then he wasn't there, and then I would, like, text or call him and be like, where were you? And he's like, oh, sorry, like, I forgot, or, like, and I was like, well, or I would see him next week, and I'd be like, hey, we didn't see you last week, like, what'd you have going on? And he's like, nothing. I was just asleep, or, like, whatever, I was bored. Like, he was, like, that's not so much of nothing going on that he would forget to come to these things, and so I would have to, like, go to him to find him, and oftentimes I'd be like, we would be starting, like, try to remind him, like, hey, don't forget what this is going on, and he would remember, but he would show up, like, right when it ended. And it's like, that's when, you know, I'm in the mindset of, like, packing up, ready to go home, but it's like, all right, let me, like, spend this time hanging out with Johnny. And so most of the time that I got to hang out with him was not during the nights, even though, like, he's right there and he could have just showed up. It would be, like, me, like, outside of his house, be like, Johnny, wake up, like, trying to get him to wake up, or him coming over after the nights when we would just hang out and talk, and he'd usually invite, like, one or two more of the guys that would live in the neighborhood to come, and we would just play soccer after we had the scheduled soccer nights. But something else I thought of when you're talking about that too, of setting up and kids showing up early, was I remember when I first joined, one of the first missions I was placed at, you know, the relationship between the kind of the parish and Adore was like they viewed Adore more as a third-party entity, and so I had keys with access to things, but it was very limited. So like it was like I had keys to Wednesdays, and then at the time that I had for youth night, with maybe like an hour early, an hour after,
Okay.
and things like this. So I didn't really have like an office space and things like that. And that was okay. I entered into that space like I'm going to mend this relationship with the parish and like make sure I just like grow in relationship with the staff so they can see this differently and they understand.
Sure, yeah.
And we did that very well. But then, you know, then COVID hit and that really changed because they had to lock down the parish, and that kind of reset like this idea of this Adore to parish relationship. And so kind of when things slowly started back up again, I could tell from like 2 to 3 years in, and then I wasn't living like 20 minutes from the parish, I started living an hour away from the parish, that I just got stuck in this trap of like, I'm only going to show up for when I have these nights.
Yeah.
I'm not here extra. And I could tell like I was losing buy-in from the kids, because like I was only there for the mindset of like, here we are to run this thing, more out of like disdain, not for the kids or the parish, but for like the opportunity I had to even be there, and then that ended up like bleeding in a negative way with the kids of like, you know, like if I were to see the kids outside, then it would be kind of like a hiding moment, I feel like, and it would totally like counteract if I'm up there being like, I love you guys, I'm so happy you're here, but then I see them outside the ministry and I'm like not excited to see them, right? Then it's like, yeah, I feel like they just picked up on that vibe, and it started to become. I just remember the same way, the guilt that you felt when the kid showed up early. I started to just feel like I'm not doing this well or right. That's a hard place to be.
Right.
It's a hard place to like, okay, how do I like reignite this fire and like break into this thing that I'm kind of, I don't know, it feels like sludge that you have to kind of like shake off.
Sure.
Yeah.
Here, Nate, you mentioned it, you alluded to it early, adults. Like, and the adults that you're in ministry with, in collaboration with. Because yes, we're assigned to a parish, like this is where we're at. Then that pastor might say like, hey, I have these chaperones that are ready to serve with you, you know, and you're in a way, there's a part of that ministry to the parish that you're also ministering to them too sometimes, you know, for whatever, like, and they could be, you know, dad with kids that are grown or slightly older than you, or just, you know, young enough to volunteer at, you know, 19, 22, whatever it is, whatever your parish allows. But what do you do when you have, you know, you minister to the kids, you know, they came early, they came late, but then you're like ready to go home, you know, your wife's like, hey, you coming, you ready? And then you got an adult that needs you. And you're like, man, forget you. You know, but honestly, like that's something like, and we had that by the boatload at some of my parishes where, you know, they would just linger around. It's kind of like a, you know, walk a girl to the door and she's like fiddling with her keys. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's a weird thing. But, like, go home. But, like, they need someone too.
Yeah.
And I don't know, has that ever been something with you, Alex? Like, where you have, like, in your ministry, like, you're just like, oh, here's this adult that I think needs me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we serve the loneliest generation, but unfortunately not every other generation is not lonely. You know, so like, yeah, these people, sometimes they hang around because they have nowhere else to go. Yeah. They have no other friends outside of the parish. They have no other purpose in life other than to be this core team leader. That's part of go forth and make disciples of all nations. You know, we're not just called to serve the youth. Even though that's a core part of our apostolate. You know, as Adore missionaries, we also go to the homeless, go to the imprisoned, go to the elderly, like all of the core places where Jesus is most needed, namely the loneliest generation. But yeah, I mean, within our own core groups at our parishes, like those people, you know, they need to be fed just like we do. You know, like I'm so grateful that we, as Adore missionaries, like we're required to take a personal retreat every year. We're required to either be in spiritual direction or counseling, because that makes sure that we're not just pouring out of an empty cup constantly. Because then the teens just get the bottom of the barrel, and you know, like we're giving to our families all the time. But we need to be pouring to ourselves, and you know, the same goes for our chaperones, for those that are volunteering and that are helping us, and you know, they're on their own journey. Sometimes they're not as far along as what is convenient, I guess, and they need that spiritual guidance. You know, I have a chaperone right now that every single time I talk to her, just in general. Like I feel like she's like so grateful because I'm like teaching her something new every single time I talk to her, and I'm like, that's great. But like, you know, and I'm so grateful for her as a chaperone because she's got the heart. She just doesn't have the head knowledge, and clearly that's not necessary. It's not necessary to have that head knowledge, but sometimes people really need to have that heart-to-heart as well. And it's in those moments that we can be missionaries not only to these teens, not only within the parish, but we can be missionaries to all who we encounter. You know, like I was saying earlier, just the young adults or even the parents sometimes that were of the teens that were serving, like they're just like, I don't know how to handle this kid. I don't know how to love this kid where they're at, and you know, my own, like their own kid. But then here we are, like with the heart of a disciple, with the heart of a missionary, going and teaching them how to be that as well. Sometimes, like you said, like that's disrupting, and you know, many a time where I'm chatting, not with my teens during youth group, but with my chaperones, because this is their only time to really have someone to talk to, someone to like advise them or to see them as well. I think it's just really cool how the call to mission life extends far beyond just those who we serve. It's good, you know.
What do you guys say makes disruption holy?
Camera turns to...
Gordon!
Say it again.
What would you guys say makes disruption holy?
Leaning into the inconvenience.
I mean, presuming that you're prayed up and you're tuned into the right station, right? Old head with a radio tuning. That it comes from the Spirit. And how do you know that, right? One of those ways is that I was gonna say it brings you peace, but I mean, in my case, it brought more frustration at first, right? But the more I prayed on it, the more I saw that God was in the details, you know? Guess you don't know. I mean, I really, like, I'm sitting with it too. It was hard for me, so I don't know. But how about for you? I know it's your question, but do you have that answer of how do you know if is that the question? Like,
Well, just like, yeah, like, what's the distinction between disruption and holy disruption?
it's leading, it's potentially leading to greater intimacy with our Lord.
Yeah. I don't know.
I kind of always, what's the word? Like, draw back into just how is this a chance for me to grow in humility? To grow in my own relationship with Christ, and to allow this ministry not to be my ministry, but the ministry of Christ working through me. So that disruption, like if it's God's will for me to speak to this person right now and talk with them for 30 minutes and the whole night be pushed back 30 minutes, like that's God's will. Because maybe it speaks more. Maybe the Lord wants to meet that person right there, right then.
Sometimes it's when something is challenging enough that you know, I'm taking a stab in the dark, but like, oftentimes I find it's like, is it challenging? Yes. Is it going to require a pivot? Yes. Does it align with the the pillars of, like I would use in this example, the pillars of what a door's about, or the core values of what a door's about. And if the answer is yes, those line up, then that might be where the Spirit is moving.
Right. Yeah, I would think what came to mind just now is like when a disruption comes up, what is the root of my like resistance to the disruption? Like, why would I not want to allow that to move forward? Is it out of my own pride or selfishness? Or am I like, this is disrupting in a way that's like unhelpful for everybody, so we need to like not allow that to happen and move on. Like when a teen is being disrupting in a negative way for a group versus like one example I was thinking of, because I led a workshop at one point that I titled like micro discernment, this idea of like often on like retreats really or like camps when you are like really in the groove of like like following the schedule, running these things, and like you said, we need to pivot. But when like something very troublesome happens, like a teen brings something he shouldn't, like drugs or alcohol, or something like this comes up, we know the rule book of like how to handle certain situations. We know, okay, I need this form, I need to like call this person, this and that. But sometimes we can get so caught up in that system that we don't know what is the immediate first step. And I think like with any kind of disruption, the first step to begin to move it towards holiness is like to take pause. And like even in justice or like following something, not losing sight of the person involved, if that makes sense. Like another question I had was, as fathers, we experience this struggle of holy disruption, like with our kids and our wives. So like, would you say being in the work, like when you've been in ministry, the times where you've allowed for disruption in a way where like teens come early or teens come late, or I have to minister to this core team, then you go home and you're like, I've just spent all my...
Tapped out.
Right. So which one informs what? Does like leaning into that at home better inform your ministry, or does leaning that into ministry better inform that at home?
It's actually easier to do it in ministry than it is at home.
Oh, yeah.
Sadly. Yeah, sadly. Yeah. I was before you even brought up the father thing, I was like, oh my gosh, when Jubilee, has a fistful of paint and she's running around the house, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's like waterproof, not waterproof paint, but like water soluble, so it's like, it's fine.
Way to make that disclaimer.
Yeah.
I mean, judge me with water. So
No. I'm saying it's easily cleanable, is what I'm saying. Like, if it gets on the carpet, it's fine.
yeah. I'm sure your wife had a good time cleaning that up. No, for sure. I definitely agree. Like, you would think it's a given. You know how it should be ordered. It ought to be, right? You get fed, you give it to your family, and then that informs like what you do professionally, right? But sometimes, you come home and you're like, I'm all tapped out. I gave it all, especially on a weekend retreat. And that Monday, when you have a rest day, you're come off that whole weekend, and that's the moment where your kids now need you. Mm-hmm. Now you're on, and as a dad, you're never off. That's your primary vocation, right? But those are the moments where you have to still be, I say on your guard, but you have to welcome it, right? That's easier said than done. I know that I'm more likely to be frustrated by the demands of parenthood after a long weekend with teens, but always recognize it after, but yeah.
I mean, even after a long work day. I mean, like now that I've taken on a much more leadership role, I guess, at Shrine, it's been, I've been working a lot more than I really ever have in mission thus far, and it's great. I love it. It's it's great. But then I come home and like I want to rest, but like that's not my calling. My call, like I'm not. You know, my wife's been with the kids all day. It's a toddler and an infant, and you know they're exhausting. So she's like, you know, here are the kids. You know, I'm gonna go take a break for a second, and I'm like, but I just worked this whole thing. You know, it's like there's this tension, and you know, Satan wants to use that tension against us all the time. But ultimately, I mean, my call as a father is to, one thing takes precedence. You know, yeah.
And the beauty in that as well is like, how do you recognize the holy disruption? Well, we're blessed as fathers to have a counterpart in our lady, in our wife, to be able to check us.
Yeah,
and then hopefully, if we're single, that we have someone else that checks us, that is able to be that, you know, well, whether it be a mentor, a colleague, a spiritual formator, someone that's on us a little bit, that knows our story, that's been on the journey, and that's able to be like, oh, you missed the boat on this. It's okay. Love you. Here's how you tap back in.
Right.
Right. Having that person is
I was just thinking, like, even though it might be harder at home, probably because it's like 24/7, but you can't clock out of that.
Yeah.
It's also almost easier too because you have, you know, a spouse who you're splitting that. Like my wife, we talk about this all the time. She struggles with holy disruption of the kids just as much as I do. Versus like in ministry, you can become blind to it. You can not be doing it and not realize. And like, because there's not really someone there to check you on it, or the person who does check you on it is the teen who they're checking you on it because they're essentially coming to you and being like, you're not paying attention to me. And at that point, it's like the damage, there's already kind of been some sort of damage. And you're like, oh yeah. So like, it's, I don't know, this idea of like making sure you either have some sort of, you're going a spiritual direction, or you have some sort of mentor in the ministry role, or you're doing like a daily examine, like you said, make sure you're prayed up and all that, but like you're examining your day and saying like, did I allow room for disruption because we don't have this spouse who can be like, you failed today, and you're like, yes I did, thank you for doing that. You don't have that in ministry sometimes, especially if you're in ministry alone. How do you handle holy disruption when that disruption is all encompassing, right? So not just disruption where it's like, this thing is disrupting me as the youth minister, or, you know, but like everything. Like it's something that like a political climate, or
For sure.
a parish, like
fill in the blank
tragic
of
parish
what effort
event
is.
that like now I have a core team who I'm asking to minister to these teens, but the core team are also like dealing with this. What do you do there? What do you do there?
Yeah, what do you do when the demands of the culture, or just like it's a random Tuesday and then boom, you're smacked
Right.
with
Because if you ignore it, that's not good. Like
Yeah.
But in order to address it and like allow for that disruption, you also want to provide a space that is safe and structured. Yeah.
I know for me, I always want to prime the ground for it, so I'm not as readily like, I don't love the idea of like shoehorning something in there, but again, it's not mine. You know, the ministry is not our own. It's the Lord's, and really it's the pastors. You know, and so like you're doing like their work, like the Lord's work, but it's at the service of His parish. It's His parish, and so you have to really discern, right, the weighing of those two good things. What is the need right now? And you have to be prayed up in a place, and also in your lesson to allow for those things. But there's certain moments where, you know, early on when you're the opening prayer, there's a space for that. I know we're not asking for like practical places to put things, but there's places where you could introduce how to prayers of supplication or intentions from kids that are dealing in, and you get a sense of where folks are at.
Yeah.
But I know in my time of ministry, I mean, whether it's a parent's death, teen suicide, You have the BLM stuff that was happening a few years ago. You have a lot of stuff now that's really heavy on our hearts of our teens, which is that of the immigration issues that are happening in the political climate that we live in. That stuff really weighs heavy on our kids, and it affects, and maybe it'll be the reason why you haven't seen them in a while.
Right.
Or that'll be the reason that they're dejected, or they're a little bit more resentful or combative in your small group sessions. Like, we need to be in a place to receive that and to listen. And so, but yeah, it's challenging and it's scary. It really tests your mettle of like, because I guarantee you, like, they're going through it. They're not saying it, they're not verbalizing it in that way, but absolutely. Like,
Well, I think
it's
I
happening.
think to embrace it, it's like for making sure there's a space where they can say it.
Yes, create the space.
Yeah.
That they can say.
Yeah, for me, like when the small groups that I am in, I'm like, you're like, this is y'all's space, and even if you're like, I'm angry at God, or I don't believe in God, I hate God, or like, I personally believe in this other like Catholic teaching, like what's the sort of against Catholic teaching. I believe in this thing secularly. That's not what the church says. Like, I want that to be the discussion, and not just like, all right, like, what's your relationship with God? How could your relationship with God grow? Like, tell me more about the fruits of the Spirit. I'd want it to be like a place where the kids are challenging me in the faith just as much as I'm helping engage them in like where their own personal struggles.
Yeah. I remember, I don't know if I've said this before out loud, but we had, it was like 8th grade. I was the teacher, I was the 8th grade religion teacher, and I let my 8th graders pick certain paragraphs of the catechism that dealt with a particular theme. This had to do with the priesthood. It was right around the time Spotlight came out,
Oh yeah.
and I let them go in on just like
Like
that
the
scandal.
scandals.
They went in on the scandal, but my focus was like, okay, yes, you're gonna, all right, this is the topic, sure, but you have to back it up. I was like, why, like, what is the truth about the faith and what we believe about priesthood, the dignity of the human person? Where were the violations according to church teaching? Like, you have to back it up. It just can't be a hit piece on like, look what the church is. Like, you can acknowledge and call a spade, but I remember on that day, the anxiety that I had knowing that they were going to go for this, it was like a disruption in a way, but it allowed for all of the kids to have this discussion about, you know, when we fall short, the problem of sin, even for those who are tasked with leading souls and serving souls. And it really could have been a disruption where some teachers or some youth ministers pull the plug on it and be like, I'm not, see, there's a balance, right? If you're not ready to handle that, maybe you do pull the plug.
Right.
But the need in that moment was, I need to listen to him. Kind of like how you're saying that you know the truth. You know that the God exists, that it is Christ, and, you know, through him, with him, and in him, all that. But to let a kid feel comfortable to, maybe he's not on that boat yet, but he's just going to verbalize. Some people might pull a plug on that and say, like, no, we're not going to go there because you're going to lead people astray. Like, and that's the worry, I think, at times is like, if I let them introduce this, can I win the room back, or can I?
Yeah.
You get like into yourself, like,
Yeah.
okay, I have to make sure, say it
Right.
like, I have to make sure I'm pulling you out of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's me. But you know, I don't know if I have the answer there, but like, I don't know. How about you? What do you like with that? Do you ever have those moments where you're like, something's happening in the culture, in the teens' lives, and you have to pause for a moment and answer the need at the time?
I think specifically I haven't run into that. Specifically, I think, yeah, I mean, outside of the immigration stuff, like, we haven't run into that all that much. But a lot of the immigration stuff was even just addressed by our pastor.
Yeah, no, the places where I've experienced it personally is really taking teens on retreats and either parents that are affected by ICE, or parents that are afraid of immigration situations, not feeling comfortable sending their teens, or not feeling comfortable like paying because they haven't been working because they don't feel comfortable going to work, even. And that's really, it's a really hard thing to hear, to know that like the families you serve are scared, you know. But meeting them where they're at in the best of your ability, both in a spiritual way, praying with them, but also in just like a, hey, you know, if it's just a financial reason, it's like, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. You know, God will make a way. And like this retreat, your teen is worthy of going on this retreat, and ensuring them of you know, the importance of, not the importance, but like the priority in our heart to make sure these teens go on retreats, because we know the effects of it. We know what these kids need, and even if the parents don't sometimes. So reassuring them that like, don't worry about it financially, like we will find a way. And you know, it's kind of just meeting them where they're at.
Sure. Yeah. And who do we learn that best with? Jesus, right? Yahweh, Jesus, right? There's so many. I mean, pick one, right? Woman at the Well is my favorite ones. Like, wow, why would you go there at that time, that location, to be with this person? Like it's all for him. It's like a holy disruption, because like I always laugh. It's like, and I see it best. You would think in Scripture, but I also see it in The Chosen, where like Jesus kind of like Scripture. Yes, but no, like I like it there, but I'm also like into like the visual.
It's just animated. It's just Scripture about the life.
Right. But when I watch like The Chosen, because you see things that they added on or embellished or whatever, but it's really funny because like the disciple or the apostles are like doing stuff, and like, where'd Jesus go? Oh no, he's like doing whatever. Like he's on his own mission, right? And he's going to these places to meet these people where they're at, right? And so he models obviously beautifully, because he's the model, right, of evangelization, of being able to pause for a moment and to go out and do what needs to be done and to minister to this person as if they were the only one.
I was just thinking, like, you know, with this Woman of the Well, the two that came to mind were like when they lowered the man into the roof, right? He's in the house, and all of a sudden there's this person who's like, heal me. Or even like this past few weeks, the readings of the daily readings where like he came to the disciples and he's like, all right, let's go rest. And then everybody just like went around the other side of the lake and followed them. And right before he like fed the hundreds, and it says like, they're like, Jesus, where are you? We're looking for you. And he shows up, and it just says like Jesus sees them with pity, and he starts teaching with them all day until the sun goes down. But this idea of my previous question of like, when is disruption? How do you know the difference between disruption and holy disruption? I think holy disruption is disruption that we don't view as disruption. Like, Jesus didn't see this man come down the roof and be like, oh, I'm being interrupted, but I'm going to tend this man. He was just like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And just like, this is what's in front of me, and I minister to that. And what?
No, you don't. Yeah, no.
Just that. Just, I think, like,
No, yeah.
when we're really, like, our prayer at the beginning of the day should be, Lord, whatever you have in store for today, allow it to happen. And like, almost like inviting the disruption in.
That's what I was gonna say. Invitation.
Right.
Like the view is
But once you do
invitation
that,
over
then
disruption.
it doesn't become disruption anymore.
No, it doesn't.
Like, that's just, this is
What
today
others would deem as a
Right.
disruption, as a tangent or going off, is actually something that you already pre-invited into your heart anyway.
Right.
You know, and how you look at it. But no, for sure. With Jesus, like, it crystallizes. I'm like, now I can see it. You know, whereas like, and that's how you know it's his, right? Like that you could find whatever in 2026 is ailing our culture, ailing the human person. You can go back to the scriptures, or in my case, you can go back to a Chosen series, you know, but preferably scripture, and you can see like, okay, like, yes, sin is not creative, sin is sin, right? Poverty's being what they are. There's so many. But there's a way to minister to them, and the model is in that Christ figure, where he shows us how to walk with a lonely generation, a lost generation. And so it's really cool that we get to participate in that, so long as we are tethered to, to him, to Christ, so long as we are doing our part to give him priority, in the morning, in the afternoon. Like, that's why it's so important to be prayed up, or to be checked by your wife, by your spouse, or by a spiritual formator, whoever it is, so that we can be all the more accessible to the teens or whoever we minister to, adults, teens, that kind of thing. Cool?
Cool.
All right. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and like and subscribe and follow this podcast so that anytime we drop another hit, you're there to listen to it and share it with the world. We'll put some clips out there. But again, go to adornministries.com for more on the mission of what we're here to do, what the Lord has commissioned so many of our missionaries to do. And we thank you so much for your patronage and your viewership. See you later.